On Focus this evening, the mob, the mafia, and the government's efforts to break it up. This is one big reason it matters. According to the best estimates, the mob does $100 billion worth of business each year, $100 billion, and none of it is taxed. The good news in this is that since 1980, the government says 1,200 mob figures have been prosecuted and convicted. Where does the battle stand today? Well, Ed Rabel has been looking into this, and he joins us now this evening from the Justice Department in Washington. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, Garrick. Garrick, an obituary for the Mafia is premature, but in much of America, where it once controlled governments and judges and labor unions and gripped entire businesses in its vice, the mob clearly is losing its hold.
It's taken 10 years for us to essentially dismantle the upper echelon of the 25 La Cosa Nostra families.
You ready for this next case?
I'm always ready.
Even reputed mob boss John Gotti is having a bad time. Gotti of the Gambino family, the most powerful in the country, eluded prison in the past. But he has been jailed without bail to stand trial for murder, racketeering, and conspiracy.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
In movies romanticizing them, the traditional organized crime families are portrayed accurately, avoiding violence except to eliminate obstacles to their illicit businesses. The targets, corrupt cops or rival gangsters. But authorities are warning America that new, far more dangerous gangs are replacing the Mafia in the 90s. Unlike the mob, gangs of Asian immigrants and inner-city toughs are killing indiscriminately. More and more innocent people are becoming the victims.
These are undisciplined kids who build reputations by showing that they have heart, by showing that they take nothing from nobody on the street.
Just last week on a residential street in the nation's capital, 5 children, one a 6-year-old, were wounded in a drive-by shooting by young hoodlums. Washington is known as the murder capital, with more than 470 violent deaths this year alone. Street gangs with names like the Crips and the Bloods control large segments of cocaine trafficking nationwide. Jailing them, as with the old Mafia, makes little difference.
The new groups that are coming along are filling the vacuum left by the Mafia. Many of them are less controlled, they're less institutional, more violent, more prone to kill police officers, more prone to random violence.
Meanwhile, the Asian gangs have spawned fears of a new drug epidemic in America by pushing high-purity heroin. Still, the FBI insists that the new gangs, while dangerous, are not as bad as the Mafia was.
They don't have the hierarchy, the structure, the continuity, or the multiplicity of criminal activities. They're essentially built around drugs, the use of violence for intimidation and enforcement of turf.
But a former Virginia detective who had to confront them says the vicious Asian street gangs that are on the rise will make the Mafia look like a fraternity of wimps if the police don't crack down. And Garrick, Congress estimates that the Asian gangs could grow to 10,000 members by 1995. That's double the number the Italian Mafia had at its peak. You add to that the inner-city gangs and the other immigrant mobs that are on the rise, and you can see what the police agencies are up against in this decade.
Well, Ed, the Mafia has been around for a long time in this country. Why is it losing so much power so quickly, so dramatically?
Well, not to be simplistic, Garrick, but it's sort of like the son who takes over his father's successful business and then promptly runs it into the ground. The Mafia leadership today certainly isn't as competent as its predecessors. But the other big thing was something called the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization Act, or RICO for short, which was enormously helpful to the government in developing cases against the Mafia leadership.
As you just showed us, there are new gangs, new young toughs moving in. Why are so many of them coming from Asia to the United States?
Well, the government says because the British are going to turn Hong Kong over to the Chinese in 1997, many of the 100,000 members of the vicious Chinese triads are fleeing to America, swelling the ranks already here. So it's a big problem, and it's getting bigger.
Always the land of opportunity. Ed Rabel, thank you very much. And we'll have more news as we continue in just a moment.